We are at that time where you start talking about who's overrated, who's underrated, who's getting more hype than they should be, and who's not getting enough respect. We talk about that coming up next on Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. I am not the madman Tyler Rowland. I am Kevin Ostrecker filling in for Tyler today here on the show. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On NFL a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We're 5 days a week here on Locked On NFL. So Monday through Friday, bringing you that daily NFL content with Tyler in the mornings, the madman, and then Tony Wiggins in the barbershop breaking it down for you in the afternoon. And we'll be breaking down all the biggest stories around the NFL with the help of our Locked On NFL experts, which today here on this Wednesday is Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. And Luke, this is that time of the offseason. We're just seeing teams get so much hype that they do not deserve. And everybody's talking about, oh, this fit is going to be great and this is going to be awesome. And then it ends up crashing and burning. On the other side of things, we also hear about teams that are overrated. I put in air quotes, just a lot of speculation, which of course is the best part of the offseason, right?
Yeah, sure. This is maybe a time where we could all go outside and grill a steak, you know? Maybe hold your children. You don't need to do this.
Or we talk about NFL win totals and how they are good or bad. And that is what we are going to do here today on Locked On.
You can be
NFL.
Listening to a podcast while you hold your children. I'm just saying, this is not a hands-on activity for you, listeners.
That's a good idea. You can do both. You can listen to Locked On NFL and hold your children. You get the best of both worlds. That is a winner takes all mentality there from Luke. I love that, Luke. But we're diving into overrated and underrated teams today. Mini camps are wrapping up or have wrapped up. Some teams actually started them up on Tuesday, including the team I cover in the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm a little bit late to the mini camp party, but then there's that long break before training camp begins. And so it is a perfect time to kind of talk about where teams are perception wise, roster building wise. And I think starting off with some of these overrated teams, one of the perception factors that I feel like a lot of people have talked about on social media is the Kansas City Chiefs and them being overrated because of their Super Bowl loss. I don't feel that way, Luke. I feel like Kansas City, they ran into a juggernaut in the Eagles. They were in a lot of close games last year. We all know that. I think that feeds into the perception as well. Like, oh, can they be in that situation, one of those close games? But they are going to get some guys back healthy. You still have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and particularly in that wide receiver room, which is really interesting. Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy over at Locked On Chiefs, they talked about that group and how it can be a defining factor for them. So I want to play that clip from Locked On Chiefs, and then we'll talk about this perception that Kansas City is overrated on the other side.
And the real exciting thing for me when you start looking at this wide receiver core is, if Hollywood Brown is able to stay healthy this season, you have Rashee Rice coming back, who looks like, at least from what we've seen in the videos, looks like he is close to, I'd say, at least 90% health. The reality is you have those two guys who are very good wide receivers in their own right, and then you have a guy in Xavier Worthy who we just saw start hitting stride at the end of last season. That's the exciting part about this, is you have those three guys already in line, ready to go, and you bring in a kid like Jalen Royals, who's going to be another one that can be a burner and could take the top off the defense.
Now, over on FanDuel, you have the Chiefs over 11.5 wins at plus 105. You have over 13.5 at plus 340. I'm not going to go off of the Super Bowl, Luke. I think that's an unfair thing to put on them, especially for me covering the Ravens. Like, Kansas City's been that team that the Ravens and the Bills have not been able to get over. I'm not buying the, Mahomes is getting older. Travis Kelce, sure, he's up there in age, but we still see that he wants to play football. Where are you on this perception that Kansas City's overrated right now?
I think the betting market kind of doesn't lie when it comes to public perception. I think that's the best proxy we have for overall public perception. And, what we all hear is kind of based on what social media we're exposed to. So I think you kind of have to look at something a little bit more objective. And the betting market has the Ravens, Bills, and Chiefs as the kind of top three in the AFC. Pick your choose. I think that's probably appropriate, but for the Chiefs, I think if you wanted to show up and say, hey, it's the Chiefs conference until it isn't, they've won this conference 5 out of the last 6 years. That's an unreal run. So until someone can knock them off, all this stuff feels like window dressing a little bit. The Chiefs have won the AFC with really good pass catchers, with prime Kelsey, Tyreek Hill. They've won the AFC without those guys, with a hurt Kelsey, no Tyreek Hill. They've found ways to be a deep passing team, to be a short pass and, Xavier Worthy yards after catch team and be in the Super Bowl. They've found a whole bunch of different ways to do it. So I think if they have a vision, you kind of just have to say, I trust Andy Reid to make that vision come to life in a way that wins a lot of football games. And that feels pretty properly rated to me. I think the only way you could ask for them to be more highly rated is to essentially ask them to be like the default. They will win the AFC. And I don't think that that's a responsible prediction to make about anybody in June. Here's your 3 contending teams. And then, I don't know, maybe the Bengals, if you want to get spicy about it. That's your AFC picture. And it's been the AFC picture for half a decade now. I don't really see why I would look at any of that and change it.
Look, if you want to say that the AFC, those top 3 it's closer maybe than it's been in recent seasons, that's okay for me to say. But I think that you still definitely have to include them in those top 3. And the fact that I thought they had a great draft. I thought that they replenished some of their young talent. They've lost a couple guys over the last couple of years. You mentioned Tyreek Hill, what seems now like eons ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. But, you lose L'Jarius Sneed, had a rough go of it in Tennessee last season. You lose a couple guys on the defensive line this offseason, which you're able to get back. The Chiefs roster is still very, very good. And
a lot of that core is still there. Yeah. It's Mahomes. It's Chris Jones. It's, what they have on the O-line is, I think, worth trusting. I know they lost Joe Thuney, but right. It's okay. I don't know. I feel like there's plenty there, and they've had success with a lot less.
And for guys, for teams like Buffalo and Baltimore who have upgraded, it just feels like Kansas City has done that as well. It's not like that needle has fallen so far for Kansas City that you put them 3rd behind Buffalo and Baltimore. And I think that, you can argue about whose roster is better, but we also know that Kansas City has been there and done that. That they have that experience advantage, particularly in Super Bowls, that Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and those teams do not. So I'm not buying it that Kansas City is overrated. The team that I am buying is overrated is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm not just saying that because I cover a team in the AFC North that particularly doesn't like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, but we had to go through this whole Aaron Rodgers situation, and I'm going to play a clip from Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. It does not relate to Aaron Rodgers. I know it's crazy, right? Crazy.
He's allowed to talk about something else.
Yeah, I know. It's unreal.
Freedom.
Steelers made a move that was not Aaron Rodgers. They actually signed Deshaun Elliott to an extension. So Chris talked about that move a little bit on his show. So we'll talk about that and why, unfortunately, I do not believe that or the other moves the Steelers have made are going to be enough to save their season this year.
That move was an extension of safety Deshaun Elliott. It is depends on how you talk about it. They've given him 2 more years on top of the current year that he had. He now will be with the Steelers for 3 total seasons, including this one, getting $15.5 million in the process. This was, I thought, a very solid move, Alan, and a sign of appreciation and an acknowledgement to how good Deshaun Elliott was for the Steelers last year and how important they think he is for the defense moving forward.
I'm happy Deshaun found a home, especially because he started his career out in Baltimore. Good guy and played really, really well for them. And it was refreshing to see a Steelers clip without Aaron Rodgers in it. Just watching that and not hearing the name Aaron Rodgers. It was nice. It was nice.
You have to imagine it's nice for Chris. Yeah. Hey, throw another Steelers defender on the pile that, another young core piece of their defense that they kind of get to just churn 6 or 7 of them at any given time and have a good defense.
Yeah, it's the Steelers way. And they're always a team that's going to be in it in some way, shape, or form. But speaking of Aaron Rodgers, I think that signing does have some people excited, others, including myself, not so much. Over on FanDuel, you have over 10.5 for them at plus 320, over 8.5 at plus 110. Luke, are you a Steelers believer, or do you think they are overrated?
I'm not a Steelers believer at all. I think Aaron Rodgers got way too much credit throughout this whole thing. I cannot for the life of me understand. Maybe people just didn't watch Jets games. Maybe they got bored with them, which is telling in and of itself, because that was supposed to be the shot in the arm that franchise needed. But like, did you watch that dude last year? He is not a good quarterback anymore. He doesn't have it. He's not consistent. If that guy had a different name, we would probably be like relegating him to backup stat. He was good at times, but not consistently enough nearly. And he definitely had times where he cost that team more than he gave them. And we just all kind of forgot that happened and rolled into this offseason like that it was this massive sweepstakes, like it was Peyton Manning in 2012 hitting free agency. Who's he gonna pick? Let's all do the Bachelor about it. And not only is that entirely annoying because Aaron Rodgers is an objectively annoying person. Don't take my word for it. Take his family's. It's still like, also, are we really doing this over this guy? I feel like every single team involved in that sweepstakes could have done better at some point in this offseason. And it's the Steelers that failed to, and now they're here because they've chosen this. I don't see where this team being like, I don't know. I know that the Steelers just went through like Kenny Pickett and it's been worse, but like, this ain't gonna work, man. He's not there. He's not that dude anymore. And I don't care that you have DK Metcalf instead of George Pickens. Everything else went laterally, and you are just worse at quarterback than you were with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Russell Wilson had moments for them last year. Justin Fields had a couple moments for them, and like if they had DK and George Pickens together, maybe I could be sold a little bit more. But you're right. Like you then move off of George Pickens after getting.
I'm not scared of that. If
you're
I'm
just,
you're Ravens. Yeah. Like if I'm game planning for that,
yeah.
I'm like, Aaron Rodgers. Like I covered plenty of games walking into a game against Aaron Rodgers and being like, oh boy, let's see if we can limit him to, not putting up 40 on us. This is no longer that world.
No. And to me, it's DK Metcalf in Friends right now.
Yeah.
So coming up in the second part of the show, we're going to be diving into some teams that are potentially underrated. And we'll talk with a couple of hosts from our local shows about potentially maybe San Francisco, maybe a team like Dallas. Where's the perception on those teams? Stay tuned. A lot coming up on Locked On NFL. First, the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track. I know I certainly have lost track plenty of times, but that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Now, Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. Now, when I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on a lot of things I had no idea I was spending so much on, but now I'm able to budget smarter and save more. Plus, I love the fact that you can manage money with your partner, and it is smoother than ever to do so. You can track your shared and personal accounts. Plus, you can set goals and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Back on Locked On NFL, Kevin Oestreicher and Luke Braun here with you on this Wednesday edition of the show. I'm not Tyler Rowland, filling in for Tyler here on this Wednesday. We talked about some overrated teams in the first part of the show. Let's move into some potential underrated teams. And over on Locked On 49ers, Luke, Brian Peacock, Eric Crocker, they were talking about the 49ers. And Brian Peacock was very passionate about the fact that San Francisco is an underrated team this year. So I want to play the clip from Locked On 49ers, and you and I will talk about it and look at if Brian's right or not.
If you think they're still the same team they were last year, they're going to be a 6-win team, you're severely underrating them. If you're not worried about potentially facing them and losing a playoff game to the 49ers, you might be underrating them. But I think that's a really good place to put the line. Like, are the 49ers playing in the second round of the playoffs or not? Because I think they should be a playoff contender. I think they should be a team that expects to be in the playoff mix, being either, winning the division, maybe even having a bye in the first week of the playoffs, but at least playing and having an opportunity to be in the tournament. I think you should expect that from a healthy San Francisco 49ers team.
So Brian's not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. He's not saying they're going to be in the NFC Championship game. But after the years of injuries, the past couple, at least last year, that San Francisco had, them getting healthy, that is a factor. Now, they did lose some pieces. Deebo Samuel being the deal that he ends up going to Washington. Over on FanDuel for the 49ers. You look at FanDuel, and the 49ers right now, if you want to get spicy with over 12.5, that's plus 280. Under 8.5 is plus 250. It's right in that sweet spot of like over 10.5 is minus 110. Where are you with San Francisco, Luke? Because look, they were injured last season, but is Brock Purdy good enough to get them to where they want to go, especially after signing that big deal? I mean, they're stuck with him now.
Yeah, the world is still pretty optimistic on the 49ers with those numbers. I mean, if your win total is set at 10.5, that's the same as Detroit's. Like they still see those two teams as powerhouses of the NFC along with Philadelphia. I am not with that. I don't see it that way. I actually, they're favored to win the NFC West. I actually disagree with that. I think it should be the Rams, who I do think are underrated at 9.5 on FanDuel. And I've talked a lot about the 49ers with Tyler on Locked On NFL over the last few weeks because of the Brock Purdy stuff going on and all of the losses that they incurred over the offseason, and how when they replaced those losses, it's really hard to argue that like a majority of those swap outs made the 49ers better. I do not think that this is a better team than the one that you had week 1 last year. And the only argument is, yeah, but they were hurt a lot and they're not going to be hurt as much this year, which for the 49ers in particular is a dubious prospect. They've had a lot of injury issues, enough to question the practice plans, or if you really want to talk about like their training staff or whatever, their strength staff. They've had enough of these problems, or just the fact that their roster leans on guys like Christian McCaffrey, who are always hurt, or Deebo Samuel, who they don't even have anymore. It's really hard to look at the 49ers and say this is a better team than the one that went in last year. Now, the one that lost, 11 games last year, a lot of that was because of injury. I get it, but I do think that there's still a core rot to the 49ers. And I think it got papered over by some really cool skill players and a point guard at quarterback that now has to do a lot more than point guard. And we'll see if he's able to do that. For me, I think I would take under on the 10.5, but I would probably still have him like in the playoffs. So I don't know if I'm super far off of Brian there. I see them as kind of a wild card also, rather than like a true NFC contender like the betting markets have.
Yeah, I'm with you, where I think the Rams should be favored to win the West. And while I think that San Francisco is certainly going to be in that playoff hunt, I haven't been really sold on Brock Purdy. He had a great year a couple of years ago. San Francisco believes in him as their guy. But, you have to wonder, is Christian McCaffrey going to be able to stay healthy again this year? Obviously that's a question you have to, because every team deals with injuries. And so I don't love using the excuse. Like, it was there for San Francisco. Like, it is valid to say that San Francisco was injured last season because it was objectively true. But to me, it's like, is that just the identity? Like, is McCaffrey going to play in 5 games this year at the beginning of the year, be awesome, and then be on the shelf for the next 11 and then come back at the end of the season? Like, that's something you have to factor in here. So they have great players. Like, their roster, I think, is good, but it's not a team that I'm all of a sudden saying, man, San Francisco right now is massively underrated. I think that, compared to where they were last year, if you just think that's going to be the norm for them, is always injured, they're going to win and be in that top 15. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be San Francisco, but that also depends on how injured or not they are. I think if they can stay healthy, they can be in the conversation, but if they are, sure, I think we're going to see another year like we saw.
And that applies to every single team in the NFL. Right. Well, if they stay healthy, here's the vision. If you do not stay healthy, your team will fall apart. And every year there is a team that no matter what they were supposed to do in the preseason, they just have too many injuries and they can't do it. This happened to the Bengals a couple of times. And it's happened to the 49ers just last year. And then there are teams that are supposed to be bad and also get injured, and then they win one and it's a disaster season, right? But if you look at like things that lead to playoff success, it's boring because it's not really that controllable. But like, which team is healthiest is like one of the best predictors. So like, yeah, man, if you stay healthy, you'll be good. But that doesn't separate you from any of the other 32 teams.
Yeah. The best skill you can have, the best ability is availability. And
yeah,
for a
exactly.
lot of these teams,
you have no control over that. You have no control over what happens when you twist your knee the wrong way and the wrong guy tears his ACL, or does the guy who tears his ACL in your camp, was he going to get cut anyways? Like, it's luck.
It's a variable that you have no control over. So 49ers dealt with that, unfortunately, last season. And the Cowboys are another intriguing team that I think the jury is out on whether they are in the overrated or underrated category. Marcus Mosher and Landon McCool of Locked On Cowboys talked about their offensive line, and their offensive line, which has been a strength for the majority of, the last handful of seasons, was not great for them in 2024. So we'll talk about what Marcus and Landon had to say, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
I think if this offensive line can become, a top 10 offensive line and maybe better by the end of the year, even if the win total is a little bit maybe less than what we were hoping, I wouldn't be surprised if we're calling that a successful season because they're putting so many chips into this young offensive line. I think they know it could be a rough start out of the gate.
Added value at the offensive line position is something that will increase the odds of your having a successful season, but will also increase the long-term odds of you continually having successful seasons beyond just 2025.
And I think that was the plan for the Cowboys. Like, hey, let's try to get 4 and hopefully 5 guys that can play together and gel for the next several years. Kind of like the way they did when they had, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, and Travis Frederick, and those guys played so many years together.
Well, we're not talking about the next 5 years. We're talking about this year for the Cowboys. And I think that both Marcus and Landon made good points there about the future of that line. But you have right now Dallas over 7.5 is minus 140. You want to get spicy with over 9.5. That's plus 190. Luke, where are you on the Cowboys right now?
Yeah, I think what they did this offseason was correct, right? Get another pass catcher in the building. Drafting Tyler Booker, I think, was a must for them. I think they had to do something O-line wise. Tony Wiggins has talked a lot about that on the other show on the Barbershop, about how there's an identity for the Cowboys that was missing, and that I don't think the Cowboys have sustainability as, let's be, a team where Dak Prescott runs around and makes crazy plays under pressure and throws it up to George Pickens. I don't think that can be who they are. They've been at their best, in my opinion, as back when they were ground and pound with Ezekiel Elliott and with Dak Prescott as sort of the guy that could take advantage of all the opportunities you can get when you're, a good run team that can get into a lot of 2nd and 4s. And I think that was the best iteration of the Cowboys. I think if you're just hoping that let's have CeeDee Lamb get 2,000 yards and make the playoffs that way, like there is a hard cap to what you can do because there are too many teams in the NFC that can handle that pretty easily. You need to offer more challenges. And so I think what they did on the O-line is okay. I think there's a lot more work that the Cowboys need before I'm willing to take them seriously. But something really interesting has happened on FanDuel where if you had them like pre-draft or immediately after the draft, so the rosters haven't really changed that much. They added Tyler Booker, right? The Cowboys were the 3rd to last team in the NFC on pretty much anything. If you want to look at their division odds, their Super Bowl odds, their win total, whatever, they were seen as they were going to be a bottom feeder. And they have very slowly, as we get closer to the season, trickled up more than any other NFC team has. So hope springs eternal for everybody, but it ain't springing like too eternal for the Giants or the Titans, who, these teams that are not going to be taken seriously. But the Cowboys, for some reason, people are looking at them going, wait a minute. Are they maybe going to be part of this NFC East conversation with Philly and Washington? I don't see it. I think that we've seen similar to Tua. We've seen enough of Dak Prescott. We've seen him be unable to stay healthy a lot. So I think if they all just stay healthy, it'll be fine thing is similarly like not persuasive to me. And when he has played a healthy full season, he's been inconsistent and he's had games where he falls apart. And like, there is just, when you aren't consistent, there's a ceiling to this. To win the Super Bowl, to be the team that Jerry Jones thinks you are, you have to win 4 hard games in a row in the playoffs. If you can't win 4 in a row, if you can't be that consistent, do it week in and week out, you are an also ran at best. So I think 7.5 is an appropriate line for them.
It's a really intriguing conversation for Dallas. They're a team that I think it could go either which way. But you mentioned the Titans, and coming up in the final part of the show, we will check in on the top 2 picks, both Cam Ward of the Titans and, of course, Travis Hunter of the Jaguars. Stay tuned. Plenty coming away on the show. Back on Locked On NFL, Kevin Ostreicher and Luke Braun talking with you on this Wednesday. Appreciate everybody for being here in the morning with the Madman Show with Tyler Rowland, who I am not. And then in the afternoon, you can check it in with Tony Wiggins on the Barbershop. But let's bring Tyler into the fray here, right? Because I think we all miss Tyler on the show today. So let's talk about Cam Ward.
Our espresso.
Exactly. Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick. Tyler talked about him and his mini camp on Locked On Titans. So I want to talk about what Tyler had to say. I'll play that clip and we'll react to it on the other side.
It was far from perfect, but Cam Ward was a big-time winner at Tennessee Titans' mandatory minicamp. Obviously, we had the electric day 1 performance where he goes 20 for 21, and then some struggles after that. But look, It's mandatory minicamp. This is the first full team environment where Cam Ward can show whether or not he can be a franchise quarterback. And in my opinion, he checked so many boxes. The swagger, the leadership, the command of the huddle, the interaction with his teammates, the way they talked about him, the way the coaching staff talked about him. He's locked in. He's ready to go. His comments about getting ready to put in the work during the summertime before training camp. Like, was it all perfect out on the field? No, it absolutely was not. But Cam Ward checked all of the boxes that I wanted to see him check to prove that he could be a franchise quarterback going forward. Some other big winners, in my opinion, Xavier Restrepo. Look, this isn't just a feel-good story with Cam's buddy from college. This is a guy who's getting work from all of the quarterbacks who can get open and help this team. I still continue to believe that he makes this roster, no question about it. Also, Bryce Oliver getting some love, showed out on day 3, second year. He could really take a step forward on defense. Cody Barton was so impressive to me as the number 1 linebacker, but James Williams next to him, in my opinion, is the guy who took a step forward for that second inside linebacker spot, breaking down winners and losers on the Locked On Titans podcast this week.
Sounds like things are going well out in Tennessee for Cam Ward. Some, rookie ups and downs, which are great. But for you, Luke, what are your expectations for Cam Ward in year 1, especially on a Titans team that, I think will be better with him, but I'm not necessarily going to put them in that playoff contention category.
Yeah, I don't need Cam Ward to come out and, be a top 10 quarterback immediately for me to believe that this can work in Tennessee, right? I think a little bit of patience is absolutely okay to have if you're a Titans fan. You don't need him to be that you can put up with a few things. I think in spring, it's really hard to evaluate this stuff. It's all on air. There's no pads, there's no D lines and stuff like that. But there's this great write-up in the Tennessean about this where, you're comparing him to Tim Boyle and Will Levis, and how this guy is just clearly a different class of athlete than all of those other burnout guys. So it's, this is where the Titans will be and the truth will be laid bare in not that long. So I don't think we need to super make any major giant declarations about this yet, but yeah, it sounds like he's shown up and proven that he is the athlete that you took first overall. And while he hasn't passed any of the hardest tests yet, he hasn't taken them either. So there's no real reason to be worried or anything like that.
Yeah, once we get deeper into the workouts in the offseason, we'll figure out, who Cam Ward is. But you don't want to take too much away from any of the offseason stuff. It's going to be once he gets into game action and give him time, which I think we haven't seen a ton. A lot of these teams do with their young quarterbacks over the last handful of seasons. And we got the number 2 overall pick in Travis Hunter. We'll just do all Locked On NFL today because Tony Wiggins over at Locked On Jaguars, he talked about some expectations for Travis Hunter and why a little bit of it might be he's not going to do all this stuff. He's going to be a great player for them, but is it going to be all at once? We'll listen to what Tony had to say and we'll react to it.
I think Travis is going to have to be patient. And I think fans are going to have to be patient. So, yeah, I do believe that this will be a situation where this whole thing won't be on him. Will there be drives where he won't touch the ball at all? Sure. Remember, he was taken number 2 overall, but he was not taken just to be a wide receiver. So there are going to be times when, hopefully it's because the Jaguars are going to be a big play team, but there will be times when he doesn't get the ball, even when he's on the field. And I'm sure there'll be times when you won't hear a peep from him for most of the game for 2.5 quarters. And then bang, just like that, big plays made. Bang, just like that, he's running down the field doing his thing.
We know how much of an explosive talent Travis Hunter is, Luke. Are there too many expectations being placed on him without him playing a snap already with the talent that he is, the positional versatility that he has? Do you feel like this is going to be bang right out of the gate, boom, all Pro Bowl guy? Or like Wig said, is there going to have to be some patience here for Jaguars fans?
As a very outside observer, I cover an NFC team. We have no relation to the Jaguars, really. So it's very only osmosis. I have no idea what the expectation for Travis Hunter is because too many people have said completely insane things. He's going to be the best wide receiver and the best cornerback. What if you had Sauce Gardner and Justin Jefferson on your team at the same time? And it's oh my God, calm down. It sounds like at Jags OTAs, they've been alternating him offensive defense every day so that he's not asked to kind of do both things at once all the time. which the way that an NFL practice is constructed makes sense. The defensive positions and offensive positions will go off and do their own thing simultaneously. He cannot be in two places at once. So he's doing a day with the offense, a day with the defense, and so on. I think there's this really interesting value conversation to be had that got hashed out a lot in the draft about like, okay, if he is a, middle of the road wide receiver and a middle of the road corner, is how much more valuable is that than just being one or the other? Is it twice as valuable? Is it 1.5 times as valuable? Is it like, what's the value proposition of that? And I think we'll find out. But for right now, what it sounds like to me is that I'm not going to expect Travis Hunter to show up and be a top 5 receiver and a top 5 corner. I think if he is a middle of the road receiver and a middle of the road corner, then the Jags got what they wanted out of this. And I kind of didn't really buy it when they said, oh, we're going to have him play both. It's like, yeah, sure. You're going to have him be a corner and then, be Tavon Austin and play 2 reps every once in a while as a gadget player or something like that. But it sounds like they're really committing to that. So we'll see how it works out. And obviously like load management, cardio is going to be a really especially important part of this in a way that as NFL fans, we're not nearly as used to managing fatigue versus if you're like a hockey fan, that's like a core part of the sport. So we're going to have to deal with those stories. I don't know how we're going to do that as a community, but again, I don't need him to be a bona fide superstar at both of these positions. The point of him is that he plays both. And that might be hey, if you're mid at 2 things, are you really impacting the Jaguars? Like that's also part of this conversation. But as with all things, it's still way too early to tell. It's OTAs and minicamp. Like that, we're talking about practice.
Exactly. If he can be a good player at both those spots, hey, I'm all for it. And I think Jacksonville will be happy. But then there is that value conversation, which I think is very interesting as well. But Luke, I appreciate you. Thanks for hopping on. And thank you to everybody out there who listened to Locked On NFL today. Back here later with Wig and the barbershop, Tony Wiggins. And of course, Tyler, tomorrow morning with your latest shot of espresso. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form. We'll see you right back here soon on Locked On NFL.